Most men are taught that power is visible, audible, and assertive. From boardrooms to social circles, they learn that the way to win is to dominate the conversation, to have the last word, to articulate their point with such force and clarity that opposition simply crumbles. They carry this mindset into their relationships with women, believing that the right combination of words, the perfect apology, the logical argument, the heartfelt explanation will be the key that unlocks understanding, respect, and attraction. They operate under the assumption that communication, in its most verbose form, is their greatest tool. This is a fundamental and costly error. The reason this approach fails is that it misunderstands the very currency of influence. For many women, the true landscape of a relationship is not built on the bedrock of logic, but in the ever-shifting terrain of emotion. Words are not the end game. They are merely vessels that carry emotional content. A man can craft the most brilliant speech, but if it fails to resonate on an emotional frequency, it is nothing but noise. Conversely, a simple, well-timed silence can convey a universe of meaning that no string of sentences could ever hope to match. This is the paradoxical power of silence. It is a response that contains all possible responses, and in doing so, it becomes more potent than any single one of them. When a man chooses to engage in a war of words, he is often, without realizing it, playing a game on a field designed by his partner. He is reacting. Her provocation, her drama, or her emotional outburst has successfully triggered him, and his subsequent lecture or plea is simply a function of that trigger. The dynamic is set. She acts, and he reacts. In this exchange, even if he is right, he has already ceded control. He is dancing to a rhythm she established, and his energy is being siphoned to fuel a cycle he did not initiate. Silence shatters this cycle. It is not a passive surrender. It is an active and strategic withdrawal. By choosing not to play the game, you fundamentally change the rules. The dynamic is flipped on its head. Instead of you reacting to her chaos, she is suddenly left in an unnerving quiet, forced to react to your absence. The stimulus for the drama has vanished and she is left alone on the stage. In that void, the emotional impact is profound. The safety net of your predictable response is gone, and she is left to confront the emptiness she was perhaps trying to fill with conflict. It is in this quiet space that she begins to truly feel the weight of the situation, not because you told her how you feel, but because you have stopped telling her anything at all. She feels the absence of your attention, the withdrawal of your energy, and the stark reality of a boundary she can no longer cross. This emotional impact, born from a lack of sound, is far more devastating than any insult or declaration. It doesn't just tell her she went too far. It makes her experience the consequences of it. The effectiveness of silence as a weapon is not rooted in mere absence, but in its function as a tool of strategic deprivation. To understand this, one must first recognize that for many women, attention is not a mere desire. It is the psychological oxygen that sustains their sense of significance and power within the dynamic of the relationship. Every interaction, whether positive or negative, serves as a confirmation of their influence. When a man offers words, be they pleas, arguments, or explanations, he is, in essence, feeding a system that thrives on his emotional engagement. This is the core reason behind seemingly inexplicable conflicts or button-pushing behavior. The content of the argument is often irrelevant. The true goal is the reaction it elicits. As long as the man is responding, he is providing tangible proof that he is emotionally invested and, therefore, that she remains securely at the center of his emotional world. Even in disagreement, he is validating her power to dictate the emotional weather of the relationship. Silence operates by cutting off this supply. It is a deliberate and calculated withdrawal of the very resource the dynamic depends on. When a man ceases to provide verbal and emotional feedback, he creates a vacuum. This void is something she is psychologically unequipped to handle. Without the expected reactions to guide her, she is cast adrift. She can no longer measure his investment, track his emotional state, or predict his next move. This loss of predictability is profoundly disorienting. The framework she used to navigate the relationship collapses, leaving her in a state of uncertainty. In this state, her own mind becomes her greatest adversary. The human psyche, particularly one accustomed to a high level of emotional stimulation, abhors an information vacuum. It will instinctively rush to fill the empty space. And it does so not with logic, but with emotion-driven imagination. This is where silence becomes truly devastating. Her imagination, fueled by insecurity and the sudden lack of external validation, will conjure scenarios far more cruel and compelling than any reality the man could have articulated. She begins to interrogate herself. Is he done with me? Has he finally seen through my behavior? Is there someone else who now has his attention? These are the very questions that strike at the heart of her fears, the fear of being replaceable, the fear of no longer mattering, the fear that her own actions have irrevocably broken the bond. Because the man offers no confirmation or denial, these internal narratives spiral unchecked. The silence becomes a blank screen onto which she projects her deepest anxieties. The man does not need to accuse her of being replaceable. His silence forces her to confront that terrifying possibility on her own, making the conclusion feel like her own discovery rather than his accusation. Consequently, the control she thought she wielded through provocation begins to implode. Her usual tactics, staging a baiting text, staging a dramatic scene, escalating an accusation, now yield nothing but an unnerving calm. Each unanswered attempt is a silent confirmation that her methods are no longer effective. The power she derived from his reactions evaporates, leaving her feeling powerless. She realizes, perhaps for the first time, that she does not have the unshakable grip on him she believed she did. This realization is terrifying because it forces her to confront an uncomfortable truth, that without his willing participation, without his energy feeding the cycle, her control was always an illusion. The chaos she once directed outward now has nowhere to go but inward, and in the resulting silence, she is left to face the storm she has helped to create. The common misconception is that silence is a tactic of avoidance, a passive-aggressive punishment meted out in the face of conflict. In truth, when wielded correctly, it is an act of profound self-preservation and a demonstration of inner mastery. Its primary purpose is not to harm the other person, but to protect oneself from a game that is inherently designed for the man to lose. Every time a man engages in a circular argument with a woman who is not seeking resolution but emotional fuel, he depletes his own psychological resources. Each instance of begging for attention from someone who is deliberately pulling away erodes his dignity. Every attempt to explain himself to a partner who has already decided on a fixed emotional narrative only frustrates and diminishes him. These are battles that cannot be won on their own terms, because the victory for her is not in the outcome of the discussion, but in the very fact that the discussion is happening at all. By choosing silence, a man removes himself from this unwinnable arena entirely. He is not running from the fight. He is refusing to enter a ring where the rules are rigged against him. This refusal is an active, disciplined choice. It communicates a clear and powerful boundary. I will not participate in this chaos. My emotional energy is valuable, and I will not spend it on a dynamic that only serves to drain me. This is not an emotional reaction. It is a strategic non-reaction. It is the difference between being a puppet, whose strings are easily pulled, and being the puppeteer, who decides which strings are worth touching. In this space of quiet self-containment, a crucial shift occurs. The focus moves from trying to control her behavior, futile endeavor, to exercising absolute control over his own. It is through this demonstration of self-control that silence forges genuine respect. A man cannot negotiate for a woman's respect through words. He cannot logically explain his value or argue his way into being seen as strong. These attempts often come across as needy and validation-seeking, having the opposite of the intended effect. Respect is earned non-verbally, through action and composure. When a man remains calm and unshaken in the face of provocation, when he refuses to be baited into an emotional outburst, he projects a frame of unassailable stability. He shows that his sense of self-worth is not contingent on her approval or her understanding. He proves that he is not easily manipulated, that his emotional state is not a toy for her to play with. This is the essence of what is often called frame, the unspoken psychological boundary that defines the terms of the interaction. A man who holds his frame in silence demonstrates that he is the rock against which her waves of emotion break, rather than the boat being tossed by them. This commands a deep, instinctual form of respect, even if it is begrudging. A woman may not like his silence, she may even rage against it, but on a fundamental level, she cannot help but recognize the strength it requires. She instinctively knows that a man who cannot be provoked is a man she cannot control. And while the desire for control might be a driving force in the dynamic, the respect for a man who cannot be controlled is the silent, unavoidable acknowledgement of his true value. This respect, born from disciplined non-action, is far more durable and meaningful than any temporary approval won by clever arguments or desperate pleas. The principle of scarcity is a fundamental law of human psychology. What is readily available is often taken for granted, while what is rare and difficult to obtain is perceived as inherently more valuable. This principle is the engine that drives the power of silence from a defensive shield into an offensive tool that reignites attraction and pursuit. In a relationship dynamic, when a man is constantly available, perpetually responsive, and emotionally transparent, he becomes predictable. His attention becomes a constant, reliable resource, like background noise that is eventually tuned out. There is no mystery, no unanswered question, and therefore, no psychological trigger for desire. Desire, at its core, is fueled by the gap between what one wants and what one has, a gap that predictability effectively closes. Silence is the instrument that recreates this essential gap. It is a deliberate and strategic creation of scarcity. By withdrawing the constant stream of communication, validation, and attention, the man transforms himself from an abundant resource into a rare one. His energy, once a given, is now missing. His validation, once easily accessed, is now withheld. This sudden scarcity does not go unnoticed. It creates a psychological vacuum in the woman's mind. The human brain is wired to pay heightened attention to negative changes and unresolved patterns. The absence of his once predictable presence becomes a glaring inconsistency that her mind is compelled to resolve. This is the genesis of the obsession that silence can produce. She is left with a series of unanswered and deeply unsettling questions. Why is he so quiet? What is he doing that is more important than engaging with me? Has he truly moved on? These are not logical inquiries. They are emotional hooks that latch into her psyche. This internal interrogation is where the chase is born. The man is no longer pursuing her with words. Instead, his silence forces her to pursue him in her mind. Her imagination, now deprived of external data, is forced to become active. It begins to paint pictures, often far more dramatic and compelling than reality, of his indifference, his new focus, or his involvement with someone else. This self-generated narrative, born from her own insecurities, is far more persuasive than any argument he could have made. She becomes the author of her own worry, and in doing so, she invests more and more of her own emotional energy into him. The dynamic has completely flipped. The man who was once the pursuer, spending his energy on her, has now become the object of pursuit. She spends her energy trying to solve the mystery of his silence, her subsequent actions, the breadcrumb text, the late-night call, the social media post designed to bait a reactionaire, not initially signs of genuine reconciliation. They are tests. They are probes sent out to see if the scarcity is real, or if the abundant, predictable attention can be easily restored. The man who fails this test by immediately re-engaging at the first sign of her interest proves the scarcity was an illusion, and the old dynamic of plenty instantly returns. However, the man who maintains his disciplined silence, who refuses to be drawn back in by these preliminary tests, confirms the scarcity is genuine. This confirmation is what transforms her testing from a mere probe into a genuine pursuit. She realizes that the old rules no longer apply. that his attention is now a limited commodity she can no longer take for granted, and that if she wants to regain it, she must actively work to re-enter his world. The chase has officially begun, not because he asked for it, but because his silence made him valuable. The true, enduring power of silence is revealed not in the immediate conflict, but in its long-term resonance. While words are ephemeral, their specific content forgotten. Their emotional charge fading like an echo in a hallway silence possesses a strange and persistent half-life. It lingers in the memory, becoming a permanent marker of a shift in the relationship's tectonic plates. This is because spoken arguments, no matter how heated, provide a form of closure. They are a transaction. An insult is hurled, a defense is mounted, emotions peak, and then eventually subside. The participants may be wounded, but the interaction has a defined beginning, middle, and end. It can be processed, rationalized, and eventually folded into the narrative of the relationship. She can tell herself you were being cruel, or emotional, or unreasonable. Your outburst, in its very loudness, gives her a handle by which to grasp and dismiss the event. Silence offers no such handle. It is an open loop in the psyche, an unresolved chord that creates a persistent state of cognitive dissonance. There is no dramatic scene to replay and dissect, only the unnerving memory of your non-reaction. This lack of a traditional ending is what makes it so unforgettable. The human mind is wired to seek completion, to solve puzzles, and your silence presents a puzzle she can never solve because you hold the missing piece. Long after the details of a shouted argument have blurred into obscurity, the stark, unsettling quality of that silence will remain etched into her memory. It becomes the quiet, chilling reminder of the moment you disengaged. The moment you demonstrated that she no longer had access to the inner workings of your emotional world. Words are washed away by time, but silence burns itself into the subconscious. This enduring echo is powerful because it is the ultimate communicator of self-value. In the end, silence is not merely a weapon deployed against another. It is the sharpest possible shield for the self. Engaging in conflict, whether through anger, begging, or pleading, always carries a cost for the man. Anger drains his vitality and leaves him feeling hollow. Begging erodes his self-respect and leaves a stain of shame. Arguing traps him in a frustrating circular maze of another's making. These are all forms of emotional expenditure that yield no return on investment. Silence, by contrast, is an act of profound conservation and redirection. The energy that would have been wasted in a futile debate is instead channeled inward. It creates a sacred space for clarity, for healing, and for rebuilding. It is in this quiet space that a man can finally stop reacting and start acting on his own behalf. This creates a powerful and decisive asymmetry in the aftermath of a breakup or conflict. While she is trapped in the emotional spiral, obsessively checking her phone, replaying past interactions, and wrestling with the ghosts of her own imagination, you are freed from that cycle. You are not idle. You are building. You are pouring the energy she once consumed back into your own life, into your career, your health, your hobbies, your mission. This forward momentum is the most potent form of moving on. The silence, therefore, becomes the boundary that protects your future from the chaos of your past. It is the moat you dig around your castle, ensuring that the turmoil outside cannot breach your inner peace. The final, and perhaps most profound, revelation of silence is that it forges an unbreakable link between self-mastery and shakable power. The easy path is to react. It requires no discipline to explode in anger, to send a desperate text, to demand answers. These are primal, impulsive responses that anyone, regardless of strength, can enact. But it takes a formidable will to consciously choose stillness in the face of provocation. It takes mastery to feel the surge of emotion and yet consciously decide to withhold the response. This discipline is what separates the boy from the man. It is the ultimate demonstration that you are the sovereign of your own inner kingdom. Your emotions are not public property. They are not toys to be triggered for another's amusement or validation. By refusing to engage, you send the most powerful message possible. I am not your puppet. My peace is more valuable than your drama. This is the legacy that silence leaves. It imprints a single, unassailable truth onto the dynamic, that the man who can walk away without a word, who can value his own sanity over the need to have the last one, is the man who holds the true power. He demonstrates that he can live without her attention, but that she cannot easily live with the haunting mystery of his absence. He reveals that his sense of self is not built upon her approval, but on the unshakable foundation of his own self-respect. In the end, silence is not about winning her back. It is about winning yourself back. It is the final, definitive step in reclaiming your narrative, your energy, and your life. While words are forgotten, the man who mastered his silence is not. He becomes a figure of enduring respect, and in some cases, enduring regret, not because he was cruel, but because he was strong enough to finally let go without needing to say goodbye.